Spence is just too much for Pacquiao, and he'll probably beat him up. Hey there, welcome to another edition of Coffee with the Goose. You remember we talk about things that interest us all, right? It's got to be crazy. Let me see. Sorry, Jude, I lost track of what I was doing here. Okay. Interesting, fascinating, irritating. Yeah, irritating, fascinating, and interesting. You know, I miss my own I can't remember my own name. You know, I look myself in the mirror. At my age, I look myself in the mirror and I say, who's this guy who invaded my house? No, we got it. It's interesting, fascinating, and irritating. And as you know, you guys, I'm a lot of each of those. Today, I'd like to be a little irritating. What are we going to talk about today? Well, my problem, besides being old, I haven't had my coffee. Got to have my caffeine, right? My PED. My coffee, as you know, very strong, like my opinion, and got some creamer in there to make it sweet. Oh, so sweet, just like me. All right. I'm going to take a different angle this time in our Errol Spence Jr. Manny Pacquiao saga. The big fight, as you know, coming up in August, the 21st, probably at the MGM Grand in Vegas. A lot of the details have not been released yet, and they haven't met and haven't gone on the promotional tour yet. But that's all yet to come, and we're going to cover all of that for you. We've already talked. We've dissected a lot of this already for you. We've talked about who these two guys are. They're both great fighters. Pacquiao, of course, one of the greatest ever, 62-7 with two draws. And I was just talking to, I think it was my son last night, about the losses. I was watching a video on the corruption of boxing. And no, you're not whining when you say there's corruption, because a lot of fighters, it goes on through history. There's a lot of different examples. 3 of those losses that Pacquiao suffered were out-and-out robbery, and 3 of those were avenged more than once. He beat those fighters 2 times or more in rematches. So it's I love dissecting and looking at the history, and including the corruption. That's part of the game, right? Pacquiao, again, one of the all-time greats. He's an 8-division world champion. Nobody's ever come close to that. He's been a champion and is now. He got his championship belt back. The WBA said, you're still champ. We understand this COVID's kept the fans away, and hence kept you out of the ring. So we get it. So Pacquiao still has that title. He's held a title now in 4 different decades. It's crazy. And he's the oldest welterweight ever to win a world championship, I'm pretty sure. So Pacquiao is a handful, no doubt about it. Errol Spence, of course, equally a handful. A modern-day warrior, if you will. He is 27-0 with 21 KOs, and he's a scary guy. Dallas area native. He is big. He's strong. He's intimidating. He's got all the skills. He's got all the tools to be the champion that he is. And, you know, we've heard a lot of opinions ever since they announced this fight a few weeks ago. We've heard a lot of predictions. Too early to make predictions. I mean, come on. You still got 2 months left before they actually step into the ring. So let's not rush ourselves. But people love to make predictions, and we've seen a lot of predictions on the comments section in the show. Overwhelming majority, 80% or more, say Spence is going to beat him up, retire him, send him to the hospital, blah, 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 blah. And hey, who am I? What do I know? I don't know who's going to win. Nobody knows who's going to win, right? But to come out and just flippantly say anybody is going to school Pacquiao like that, come on. You know, you got to do your homework. This is not some Joe Schmuck, what do they used to say, a tomato can in the boxing world. This is Manny Pacquiao. You don't just school him and bully him and beat him up. Yeah, he's been KO'd a couple times, but that's what happens when you face the best. You know, you take the good with the bad. But to say Spence is just too much for Pacquiao, that's just foolishness. That's childish. I mean, you know, I respect your opinion, but back it up with something. You know, but this show is going to be about how Spence can beat Pacquiao. And yes, he can. There's no question about that. I would be equally foolish if I said there's no way Spence could beat him. Of course he could. Spence has never lost, not at the professional level. What are some of the tools? What does Errol Spence Jr. need to do to defeat Manny Pacquiao? Well, how's the old saying go, Jude? Something about go to the, you're bringing somebody to the dance. Dance with who brought you to the dance, or something like that. Go with your strengths. Don't change your entire game plan or all of your good habits just because there's a very challenging opponent across the ring waiting to do battle with you. So Spence needs to stick with what got him here. Number one, I think we all agree on this, it's the jab. His right jab, remember, he's a left-hander just like Pacquiao. His right jab is very effective. He has the reach advantage over Pacquiao. His boxing skill, his fundamentals are very sound, and the jab, frustrates his opponents, and his game is built around that. And he also is very powerful on his front foot, meaning he's got to be the aggressor. And when he's not, and this, I guess you could say this about 90% of fighters, if they're not the aggressor, if they're back on their heels, they're not going to be effective. As a matter of fact, there's only 2 fighters that really have given Manny Pacquiao fits and have frustrated him and beaten him. And both of those guys can fight off their back foot. They're great punchers, and they respond. They what's the word I'm looking for? They adjust, and they play off for you. They let you come at them, and they pick you apart. Who are those 2 fighters? Juan Manuel Marquez and Floyd Mayweather Jr. They're great fighters, great champions. But guess what? Errol Spence Jr. ain't either one of those guys. He's got to stay on his front foot, and he's very effective. If he controls the narrative and he's the aggressor, he's really hard to beat, almost impossible to beat. What else does he need to do? He needs to, and this is something he doesn't do very often, he needs to throw combinations. And I don't mean just 1 or 2 punches. That's not going to do it, because Pacquiao, even though he doesn't throw as many punches as he used to, he still throws combinations, and he's going to outwork you. And what Errol Spence Jr. needs to do is stay busy, keep his hands busy, and outwork Manny Pacquiao. And he's able to do that. There's no question about it. Now, for you folks who think that Spence is just too much for Pacquiao and he'll probably beat him up, which is just crazy, you'll laugh at me when I say this, but you people who follow boxing, you know better. Spence needs to survive the early rounds. I think the only way, or not the only way, but Pacquiao's best chance of beating Spence is to do the dirty work early. And Spence is a slow starter. And so if Spence survives the early onslaught, the first 5 or 6 rounds, he's going to be very tough to beat. But he's got to be smart and play good defense. He's a good defensive fighter, no question about that. But one of the many ways things Spence has to do is survive the early rounds and not let the scorecard pile up in favor of his opponent. One thing that Spence needs to do, and a lot of fighters, this is the key to victory, is the cumulative effect of the punches. Not just the number, that's what cumulative means, is the number keeps piling up, but the damage done by those punches. And that's where Spence is very effective. Spence is not a one-punch knockout artist. Not even like Pacquiao. Pacquiao is more of a one-punch KO fighter than Spence is. Look it up. But Spence rather just beats you into submission. He wears you down. He's a heavy-handed puncher. And that's what he needs to do. He needs to deliver the punishment and not let up. And again, that's where one of his strengths is his he keeps coming at you. He's like an Energizer bunny. He never lets up. He's very aggressive, and he's not going to give you a minute's rest. He's got to do that to win against Manny Pacquiao. Another strength of Errol Spence Jr. is the body shots. Now, yeah, I said in a last video or the video before, Pacquiao, I didn't say, or if I did, I was mistaken, that Pacquiao doesn't get hurt by body shots. Well, yeah, when he was younger, he did. He was a kid. Yeah, of course he did. Anybody can be hurt by body shots, but not anymore. And he hasn't been hurt by body shots in a long time. And somebody said, yo, Thurman didn't hurt him with body shots. Thurman delivered some punishment to Pacquiao, no doubt about it. Keith Thurman's a great fighter, but no, he didn't hurt him with body shots. And you're not, that can't be, if you're anybody but Errol Spence Jr., that can't be part of your game plan because that doesn't work. Pacquiao is one of those guys who he'll stand on the ropes and do this and come on, go ahead and hit me a few times, and then he turns the table on you and blasts you with combinations. He makes you dig your own grave. But in Errol Spence Jr.'s case, he has a very effective body shot arsenal. He hits hard all over the place, but effectively with the body. And as I said a minute ago, it's a cumulative effect. He wears you down. And in boxing, as you guys know, if you, what do they say in war? You cut off the head and the rest will die. But with boxing, it's just the opposite. You work the body, that brings the hands down. Then you can go upstairs with your punches. And that's where Errol Spence Jr. is very effective. Another thing Errol Spence Jr. needs to do to win against Manny Pacquiao is control the distance. And that's what he's good at. As I said at the start of the show, he needs to, stick with what got him there. Play his strengths and controlling the distance, taking advantage of his reach advantage, and it's a sizable advantage, will be effective, very effective, and essential in his ability to beat Manny Pacquiao. And last but not least, he's got to follow a game plan. He's got to have a game plan. This is where most of the opponents of Manny Pacquiao run into trouble. There's really no game plan, at least not in a traditional sense. What I mean is, who do you bring in to spar with that mimics Manny Pacquiao so you can prepare for this guy? Nobody. There's nobody out there. Everybody agrees. You gotta study the film and have a really good management or training team on your side to come up with an effective game plan, because you can't do it with a sparring partner. It's just there's only one Manny Pacquiao. So you really got to do your homework and come up with an effective game plan and stick to it. They all say, "Oh yeah, I've got a game plan," or "You've got a game plan," until you get punched in the face. That's true. But Pacquiao and Errol Spence Jr. are both pros. They're championship fighters who've been around a long time, and that means they're smart. They're skilled, but they're smart and tough as nails. And Errol Spence Jr. can beat Manny Pacquiao. There's no question about it. Will he beat Manny Pacquiao? I'm not going to get into that now. We've still got 2 months left before the fight. But I'm learning a little more about both of these guys. It's important to remember that they're both left-handed. This is very rare. I can't remember the last time I saw, at least in the recent past, that I saw two left-handers go at it. Pacquiao's last fight against a left-hander was David Diaz. Remember that one? That was about, that was like 15 years ago. And remember how that one ended? It ended with Diaz falling face first into the canvas. It was a KO, and it was a bloody mess. And watch the whole fight. Pacquiao controlled that from the get-go. Fighting another left-hander was a walk in the park to him. Errol Spence Jr. ain't no walk in the park. Well, I agree with you. But it's going to be interesting to see how Spence responds to an opponent who is left-handed. It's an entirely different game plan. It can be very frustrating. So we'll see. The fight is coming up on August 21st, probably in Vegas, probably at the MGM Grand. My great producer and friend Jude, of course, will be with us. We're going to spend the whole week in Vegas and bring you up-to-date interviews with all of the big players, many of whom are not even involved in this fight. We're gonna talk with some big dogs. We're really excited about this. So stick with us. We're gonna talk about what Pacquiao has to do to beat Spence in our next show. So stick with us. We do our homework, and we know you guys are a very smart group, and we learn a lot from you. So we appreciate it. That's it for this edition of Coffee with a Goose. Oh, by the way, the number of subscribers keeps growing. Thanks, guys and girls. It's over 60,000 now. That's amazing. Thank you very, very much. Got more shows yet to come. All right, you guys take care.